Patrick Jane, known for his impressive ability to read behavior and for his psychological manipulation. Today, he'll be put face to face with some of the most iconic antagonists in fiction. The proposal is simple, but powerful. Who among these geniuses of crime and cunning could escape Jane's all-seeing eyes? Who could resist his mental games, or even turn the tables on him? That's what we're about to find out in today's tier list. We'll have 5 different levels: gets away clean, characters who would escape easily, leaving Jane frustrated and wondering what just happened; narrow escape, those who would get away by a thread, almost getting caught, but managing to slip away at the last second; a toss-up, balanced confrontations, where the outcome would depend on a single detail; trackable, characters who would try to escape, but in the end, would be found; and finally, caught, those with zero chance against Patrick Jane. Now that the tiers are set, let's start the list. Dexter Morgan, series Dexter.
Alone. No pretending. No hiding.
Dexter Morgan lives behind a facade so convincing that even the most observant could be fooled. As a forensic analyst, he knows the ins and outs of criminal investigation, and as a serial killer, he covers his tracks with surgical precision. Patrick Jane would notice that something is off, an absence of genuine emotion, and excessive control, but identifying it isn't the same as proving it. Dexter operates by his own code, which makes him less impulsive and more disciplined than other criminals. This makes him harder to catch, but also more predictable in the long run. Jane could exploit his internal doubts, his relationship with the dark passenger, and his struggle to maintain the mask. The confrontation would be psychological, and the advantage would shift as the two study each other. Both have the skill to hunt and to escape. With all this in mind, Dexter Morgan is placed in a toss-up. Anton Chigurh, film No Country for Old Men.
Sir, the most you ever lost in a coin toss.
Anton Chigurh is an enigma in human form, guided by an impenetrable internal code and a logic of steel. His weapon, chance, makes him unpredictable, but not invisible. He acts with consistency within his own philosophy, which paradoxically makes him trackable to an observer like Patrick Jane. The mentalist would perceive the absence of empathy, the fixed stare, the indifference to the outcome, all of which would point to someone who takes lives not for pleasure, but as a matter of principle. Although Chigurh's coldness makes emotional reads difficult, his modus operandi contains symbolic repetitions: the coin, the silence, the lack of hesitation. Jane would use these symbols against him, drawing connections and predicting his next move. It would be a dangerous hunt, but a feasible one. Anton doesn't escape because he's invisible, but because few dare to decipher him, and Jane would dare. Therefore, Anton Chigurh is classified as trackable. Lorne Malvo, series Fargo.
It's a red tide, Lester, this life of ours.
Lorne Malvo is a predator wearing the skin of an ordinary man. His ability to manipulate and change personalities at will makes him dangerous to the police, but not invisible to Patrick Jane. Malvo sows chaos for pleasure, but this also creates patterns: destruction, lies, defiance. Jane would see through the artificial calm and the malicious pleasure in the criminal's eyes. His sharp reading of body language and micro-expressions would reveal that something doesn't add up. Although Malvo can eliminate targets without leaving a physical trace, his personality generates too much noise. He underestimates human connections, exactly where Jane shines. By tracing the side effects of his actions, Jane would eventually corner him. He might escape for a while, but his tracks aren't as subtle as he thinks. In a game of patience, Malvo would end up being tracked. Because of this, Lorne Malvo's fate is trackable. Gustavo Gus Fring, series Breaking Bad.
This whole friend of law enforcement thing could be a case of keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Gus Fring represents the balance between a perfect facade and absolute control. As a model businessman and the head of a crime organization with military precision, he maintains an impeccable, unshakable persona. Patrick Jane would notice the micro fissures in this image, the empty gaze, the moments when control turns into cold calculation. But Jane would need more than suspicion. He'd need proof. Gus, in turn, doesn't underestimate his adversaries and would eliminate threats without hesitation. The duel between them would be one of patience, a game of endurance. Fring hides his crimes behind an airtight structure with perfect alibis and an absence of emotion, precisely where Jane is most perceptive. However, Fring's coldness would make him less vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Both have strategic intelligence, and victory would depend on time and the exposure of one tiny mistake. And that is how Gus Fring ends up in a toss-up. Luca Changretta, series Peaky Blinders.
We will take everything you have and take away everything that you have. And my son will kill you all.
Luca Changretta is driven by revenge and family honor, but these motivations make him predictable to someone like Patrick Jane. His violence is brutal, but not subtle. His style is direct. Jane, an expert at exploiting emotions and impulsive strategies, would quickly identify patterns in his actions. Changretta operates by old codes, and this emotional rigidity makes him vulnerable. He doesn't play chess, he plays with cards marked by pride. By tracking his threats and impulsive responses, Jane could predict his movements and set psychological traps. Changretta, despite the real threat he poses, would be exposed as an emotionally raw figure, lacking the sophistication needed to deceive a mentalist. The hunt would be quick, and his downfall inevitable. In short, Luca Changretta couldn't be anywhere else but caught. The Joker filmed The Dark Knight.
And I won't kill you, because you're just too much fun.
The Joker represents pure chaos, an enemy with no pattern, no logic, and no moral breaks. For Patrick Jane, who deciphers human patterns and hidden motivations, dealing with an antagonist who wants nothing concrete would be like chasing smoke. Jane relies on empathy, emotional reading, and understanding intentions. But the Joker shatters all those expectations. He doesn't want to win or to rule. He wants to prove that the logic of society is fragile. His advantage lies in destroying the investigative process itself. Even while recognizing the theatricality, Jane couldn't clearly predict his actions, since every move is a subversion of rationality. However, the Joker's own ego might lead him to overexpose himself. Still, his unpredictability would keep him just out of Jane's reach, escaping by a thin margin, perhaps while Jane is busy trying to save someone from an impossible choice. For this reason, the Joker's place is in narrow escape. Petter Littlefinger Baelish, series Game of Thrones.
You're more beautiful than she ever was.
Petter Baelish survives by manipulating people and social structures, but his mistake is underestimating someone who reads intentions, not just alliances. Jane would notice the small dissonances in Baelish's speeches, the subtle shifts in his eyes, the word choices with multiple meanings. Littlefinger bets on greed, desire, and vanity, all things Jane knows how to exploit. Unlike the nobles of Westeros, Jane wouldn't be charmed by promises or drawn into power plays. He would cut the strings of the web one by one until Baelish was isolated. Littlefinger's own desire for ascension leads him to expose himself at critical moments. Without magic, without supernatural bodyguards, he would fall into the traps of the truth. The one thing Jane can manipulate just as well as his enemy manipulates lies. So it's only fair to put Littlefinger in caught. Hannibal Lecter, series Hannibal.
This Hannibal you have him getting to know. I think I can help Goodwill see his face.
Hannibal Lecter isn't just a criminal, he's an aesthete of crime, someone who turns foul play into art and manipulation into a science. Patrick Jane would recognize his elegance and immediately perceive he's facing someone dangerous, but also fascinating. Hannibal knows how to play with the ego and vanity of others, and his calm, analytical speech would echo like a trap for the mentalist. The tension between them wouldn't be explosive, but silent and dense, like a dance of words. Jane might detect inconsistencies in his behavior, but Hannibal would also see right through Jane's defenses. It would be a game where the trap is set on both sides. The outcome would depend on who flinched first, the detective, touched by curiosity, or the cannibal, tempted by the intellectual challenge. Both have the tools to win and the vulnerabilities to fall. There's no other way. Hannibal Lecter goes straight into a toss-up. Red John, series The Mentalist.
Dear Mr. Jane, I do not like to be slandered in the media, especially by a dirty money-grubbing fraud. If you were a real psychic instead of a dishonest little worm, you wouldn't need to open the door to see what I've done to your lovely wife and child.
Red John isn't just a villain. He is the shadow that shaped Patrick Jane's psyche for years. His ability to infiltrate institutions, manipulate minds, and control followers makes him more than a killer. He is an archetype of fear. Jane knows his methods, but Red John knows the mentalist's deepest emotional wounds. He anticipates emotions, plants false clues, and builds moral labyrinths where Jane gets lost. However, Red John is limited by his desire to prove himself superior to Jane. This vanity is his crack in the armor. Although his network makes him elusive, his obsession makes him exposed. If he were to escape, it would be by a whisker, sustained by the fog he casts over the facts. But Jane's emotional intensity in this case is both a strength and a weakness. The game is balanced between trauma and cunning, with a momentary advantage to the ghost. In the end, Red John fits perfectly in. Narrow Escape. Professor James Moriarty, series Sherlock.
Sorry. Wrong day to die.
James Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime, is the antithesis of Patrick Jane. Chaotic, amoral, but equally brilliant. His mind operates on multiple layers, and his schemes are so intertwined they seem to defy traditional logic. Unlike Jane, who seeks truth as a form of justice and redemption, Moriarty delights in the collapse of systems. His network of influence is invisible and global, and he prefers to move his pieces from miles away. Jane, as much as he might perceive a pattern, would be frustrated to find there is no stable pattern, only provocations and traps. Moriarty doesn't just escape, he makes the detective believe he's winning. In dealing with someone who turns logic into an illusion, Jane would, for the first time, meet an opponent who manipulates the very idea of a solution. Moriarty would escape and still leave behind an enigmatic signature as a final taunt. And that's exactly why James Moriarty ends up in Gets Away Clean. And with that, we've reached the end of our list. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and ensures the content reaches more people. And of course, if you have ideas for future lists, leave them in the comments. I always read them and take notes on the most interesting suggestions. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.